Hey everyone, welcome back to Motivation Library. Today, we are diving into Circe by Madeline Miller. It's a captivating retelling of a classic myth. And to help us unravel all the juicy details, I've got Sophia Blake with me, a bona fide mythology enthusiast. Sophia, ready to unpack the tale of this often overlooked goddess.
Absolutely. Circe really flips the script, on those traditional hero-centric narratives and gives us a deeply personal look at a goddess navigating her own power and finding her place in a world ruled by, well, pretty demanding gods.
Right, it's not your typical Clash of the Titans epic. This is about Circe's internal struggles, her journey of self-discovery, and honestly, some seriously relatable family drama. I mean, who hasn't felt a little overshadowed by a sibling or two? Except in Circe's case, her siblings are, literal gods and goddesses.
Exactly. And that's what makes her story so compelling. She's born to this incredibly powerful family, daughter of Helios, the sun god,
Yeah.
and a nymph named Perse. So you've got this built-in contrast from the start.
A radiant, all-powerful father, and a mother who, while beautiful, is seen as less significant in the grand scheme of the divine hierarchy.
Exactly.
So, even as a goddess, she's dealing with those classic family dynamics, maybe a dash of parental favoritism, and definitely some sibling rivalry. What was that like for Circe growing up?
Well, imagine being constantly compared to your siblings. And not in a good way. Circe has this sister, Pasiphae, who's basically the golden child, radiant, favored, and destined for greatness. Then there's her brother, Perseus,
Yeah.
ambitious and always vying for power. Circe, with her so-called sharp features and a voice described as broken, is seen as the odd one out, almost undesirable.
Wow. Talk about a tough crowd. Even on Mount Olympus, it seems like family dynamics can be complicated. Did she have anyone in her family who actually understood her?
There was one brother, Aeetes, who recognized her potential, particularly her affinity for pharmaca, a kind of ancient magic tied to herbs and potions. He saw a spark in her that others missed.
Interesting. So even in this family that seems to undervalue her, there's this glimmer of recognition. But it sounds like he wasn't around for long to mentor her.
Unfortunately not. Aeetes, being ambitious like their father, eventually leaves to forge his own path, becoming a king. This leaves Circe feeling even more isolated, adrift in this world of powerful beings where she doesn't seem to fit in.
That's got to be tough. Surrounded by power and divinity,
Yeah.
yet feeling completely alone. It's like that old saying, it's lonely at the top, except she's not even at the top. So what event finally shakes things up for her? When does she start to embrace her own path?
It's a fascinating turning point because it's not some grand prophecy or divine intervention. It's her encounter with the Titan, Prometheus, that really sets her on a new course.
Ah, Prometheus, the one who famously stole fire from the gods and gave it to humans. How does Circe get tangled up with him?
Well, Zeus wasn't too happy about Prometheus's little act of rebellion, so he gets a pretty brutal punishment, chained to a rock where an eagle comes every day to devour his liver. Gruesome stuff. But it's witnessing this horrific scene that ignites something in Circe.
Compassion. I mean, the Greek gods aren't exactly known for their empathy. They're more into dramatic power struggles and throwing lightning bolts.
Right, and that's what makes Circe's reaction so significant. While the other gods are either indifferent to Prometheus's suffering or even relish in it, she's horrified. She actually defies unspoken rules to sneak him nectar, trying to ease his pain.
That's huge. It really shows a different side to her, a depth of empathy that goes against the grain of how we typically view those Olympian power players. So,
Yeah.
what does Prometheus make of this act of kindness? Does he offer her any guidance?
He does. He recognizes her potential for pharmaca and sees her act as more than just kindness, but a sign of her innate power. He encourages her to explore this power, suggesting she has a strength that many, including herself, haven't yet realized.
So, she's getting validation from this unlikely source, a titan who's literally being tortured by the gods. It seems like this encounter plants a seed of doubt about everything she's been taught to believe about power and her place in the world.
Exactly. And ironically, it's because of this act of compassion that Circe ends up being exiled to the island of Aya. What's meant to be a punishment turns out to be the biggest turning point in her life.
Now that's what I call a twist of fate. And it totally plays into that classic hero's journey, being cast out, facing the unknown, and ultimately finding yourself. But we're going to have to pause here for a moment. If you're enjoying this deep dive into Circe, hit that subscribe button and give this video a like. Your support means the world to us and helps us keep bringing you these explorations of captivating stories. We'll be right back with more of Circe's journey after a quick word from our sponsors. Welcome back to Motivation Library. We're in the thick of it now with Madeline Miller's Circe, exploring this goddess's journey from insecure Olympian to independent sorceress, and Sophia. We left off with Circe exiled to the island of Aiaia, supposedly as punishment. But it seems more like destiny had other plans.
It's so true. This exile becomes her crucible, her chance to truly tap into the power Prometheus saw in her. And it's not all flashy spells and instant transformations. It's a slow burn, a gradual awakening of her pharmaca abilities.
Which I find fascinating. It's not just about the raw power, but the process of discovery, the trial and error. That's something we can all relate to.
Right.
Those moments where you're fumbling around,
Yeah.
trying new things, and then bam, something clicks.
Absolutely. And for Circe, those bam moments are sprinkled throughout her time on Aiaia. She starts small, coaxing a strawberry from an acorn, experimenting with different plants and their properties. It's a reminder that mastery takes time, patience, and a willingness to experiment.
And eventually, she's not just transforming plants, she's taming wild beasts, mastering her environment. She's becoming this independent force, not defined by the expectations of her family or the other gods.
Right. It's like exile becomes this unexpected path to empowerment. She's free from the judgment and constraints of Olympus, able to define herself on her own terms. But as with any good story, there's a new layer of complexity introduced with the arrival of a certain mortal fisherman named Glaukos.
Yes, Glaukos. Love enters the picture. And Circe, being who she is, doesn't just fall head over heels. She decides to use her powers to elevate him, make him a god. Talk about grand romantic gestures. But was it really about love? Or was there something else at play?
That's a great question. I think it's a mix of both. Right, she genuinely cares for him, sees a beauty in him that others miss, but there's also a part of her that's still trying to prove herself, maybe even control the situation. Remember, she's been surrounded by these powerful, often manipulative gods her whole life.
She's trying to create the perfect partner, perhaps mirroring what she's observed on Mount Olympus. But as we know, things don't quite go as planned.
Nope, they don't. Glaukos, now a god, ends up rejecting Circe, choosing another nymph, Scylla. It's a devastating betrayal that really forces her to confront some hard truths about herself and the nature of power.
It's that classic lesson, isn't it? You can't control everything, even with magic. And sometimes, even the best intentions can backfire.
Yeah.
But this heartbreak seems to be a catalyst for another shift in Circe. How does she respond to this rejection?
She doesn't just wallow in self-pity. There's a confrontation with Scylla. And let me tell you, this isn't your typical heartbroken nymph. Scylla has been transformed into this terrifying, monstrous being. It's a vivid image of what happens when power is twisted, corrupted.
So, she's facing this monstrous version of her former rival. And I'm guessing this encounter pushes her to a whole new level of self-awareness.
It does. This is where Circe fully embraces her identity as a powerful sorceress. She doesn't back down from the danger, she confronts it head-on. And in doing so, she finally sheds the insecurity and self-doubt that have been holding her back.
It's like that moment where you realize you've been playing small, and suddenly you decide, no more. You step into your power, own your strength. So she's gone through heartbreak, exile, a monstrous showdown. What comes next for this newly empowered goddess?
Well, the island isn't completely cut off from the world. She has this intriguing and somewhat complicated relationship with Hermes, the messenger god. He becomes a recurring visitor, bringing news from the outside world, a link to the life she left behind.
Okay, so is this a new love interest? Because Hermes has quite the reputation as a charmer.
Their dynamic is fascinating. There's definite attraction, a spark between them. But it's not your typical romance. Hermes is a god who's always on the move, thriving on information and connection. He's not the type to settle down.
No, maybe more like friends with benefits, but with divine stakes.
You could say that. But more importantly, he acts as a mirror. Reflecting back to Circe, the choices she's made. He tells her about her family, the goings-on of Olympus, which makes her question if she's missing out, if she's made the right decision.
It's that classic dilemma, isn't it? Choosing the path less traveled and then wondering, what if?
Yeah.
But it doesn't seem like she regrets her choice, even if it means being a bit isolated.
No, not at all. She's content with her life on Aiaia, but that contentment is about to be challenged by the arrival of some very famous guests, Jason and the Argonauts.
You can't talk about Greek mythology without mentioning Jason and his quest for the Golden Fleece. What brings these legendary heroes to Circe's doorstep?
They need her help, of course. Navigating the seas in search of the Golden Fleece is no easy feat, and they need Circe's magical expertise to overcome the many obstacles they'll face.
So, she's got these heroes showing up, needing her guidance, but there's another key character who enters the picture here. Medea, Tell us about her and how she fits into Circe's story.
Imedi is a princess, and like Circe, a powerful sorceress. She's actually betrayed her own family to help Jason. So there's this immediate sense of kinship between them. They've both experienced love, betrayal, and the consequences of wielding great power.
Two powerful women, both skilled in magic, both with a history of heartbreaks. This sounds like a recipe for some serious drama. Do they become allies, or is there rivalry?
There's a sense of recognition, of understanding between them. They see reflections of themselves in each other's stories, but their relationship is also complex, shaped by their individual desires and the circumstances that have brought them together.
This is where we see Circe's growth.
Right.
She's not just reacting to events anymore. She's actively choosing who she lets into her life, how she uses her power. But of course, we can't forget about the most famous visitor to her island, Odysseus. His arrival marks a pivotal shift in Circe's story.
It does. And this is where Miller really digs into the emotional complexities of their encounter. It's not just the typical goddess turns men into pigs scenario. We get a glimpse into the vulnerabilities and desires of both Circe and Odysseus.
Okay, before we dive into their story, which I promise is full of twists and turns, I want to remind everyone to subscribe to Motivation Library and give this video a thumbs up if you're enjoying this deep dive. Your support keeps us going. Now, back to Circe and the man who'll change everything.
It's fascinating how Miller takes this iconic figure of Odysseus and really humanizes him. He's not just the cunning hero of the Trojan War, he's a man burdened by trauma, haunted by the ghosts of his past.
And Circe sees that, doesn't she? There's a depth to their connection that goes beyond the typical goddess seduces mortal hero trope.
Absolutely. They challenge each other intellectually and emotionally, share their vulnerabilities, their fears. It's a relationship that forces them both to confront their own shadows, and it's out of this intense connection that Telegonus, Circe's son, is born.
Now, motherhood is a recurring theme in mythology, often linked to powerful goddesses like Hera or Demeter. But for Circe, it seems to represent something different, wouldn't you say?
It definitely does. Telegonus is a symbol of hope, a break from the destructive cycles of the gods. His birth is incredibly difficult, and Circe has to use all her power to save him. It highlights the fierce protective nature of her love, a love that transcends the typical power dynamics we see on Mount Olympus.
But of course, this being Greek mythology, there's always a catch. That prophecy we mentioned earlier, the one foretelling that Telegonus will kill his father,
Right.
Odysseus comes back into play in a dramatic way when Athena arrives on Aya.
Talk about a tense family reunion. Athena, the goddess of wisdom and warfare, is a force to be reckoned with. She demands that Circe surrender her son, essentially sacrificing him to prevent the prophecy from coming true.
Wow, that's a heavy situation. Does Circe just hand over her son to appease this powerful goddess?
Absolutely not. She stands defiant, refusing to give up her son. She chooses love over obedience, even if it means going against one of the most powerful Olympians.
What a powerful testament to her transformation. She's no longer the insecure goddess seeking approval from others. She's a mother protecting her child, even if it means defying fate itself. But what are the consequences of this defiance?
Well, there's a price to pay. She has to constantly maintain the spell that shields Telegonus from Athena, draining her power and forcing her into a kind of magical isolation. But she does it willingly, knowing that her son's life is worth the sacrifice.
That's true strength, isn't it? Making those difficult choices even when there's no easy answer. But sadly, the prophecy doesn't just disappear. Odysseus eventually returns to Ai, leading to that tragic moment where Telegonus, not recognizing his father, strikes him down with a poisoned spear.
It's heartbreaking. The prophecy that Circe fought so hard to avoid comes true in the most devastating way possible. And it's made even more tragic by the fact that Odysseus, in his final moments, recognizes Telegonus as his son.
Talk about adding insult to injury. But the story doesn't end there, does it?
Yeah.
This is where Penelope and Telemachus, Odysseus' wife, and other son enter the picture.
Right. It's Telegonus who brings them to Aiaia, seeking a way to atone for his actions and ensure their safety.
So Circe finds herself in this incredibly complex situation, grieving the loss of Odysseus, protecting her son, and now offering refuge to the wife and son of the man she loved. It's a lot to process, even for a goddess.
It is, but Circe, despite her own pain, shows incredible compassion. It's in this shared grief, this vulnerability, that these three women form an unexpected bond.
It's a reminder that sometimes connection and healing can be found in the most unexpected places. But Penelope's arrival isn't just about seeking refuge, is it? There's a deeper reason why she fled Ithaca with Telemachus.
Exactly. She reveals that Odysseus, under Athena's influence, had become increasingly unstable, consumed by a desire for revenge. Penelope fled to protect herself and her son from the destructive consequences of his actions.
So it's not just grief she's escaping, but the ripple effects of Athena's manipulation and this revelation leads to Circe's final act of defiance, her ultimate rejection of the gods and their control.
She relinquishes her immortality, choosing a mortal life with Telemachus. It's a radical act of self-determination, a rejection of the power dynamics that have governed her life for so long.
What a powerful ending.
Yeah.
She chooses love, connection, and the messy beauty of a mortal life over the cold, detached existence of the gods.
And in doing so, she breaks free from the cycle of fate, forging a new path for herself. And Telemachus, the book, ends on a note of hope, a sense of possibility. We don't know exactly what their future holds, but we know they've chosen each other and they've chosen freedom.
It's such a beautiful and thought-provoking story. Circe isn't just a retelling of a classic myth. It's a timeless exploration of self-discovery, resilience, and the power of choosing your own destiny. Sophia, thank you so much for sharing your insights and helping us unpack this incredible story.
It's been my pleasure.
And to all our listeners, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into Circe by Madeline Miller. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to Motivation Library and give this video a thumbs up. Your support helps us keep bringing you these explorations of captivating stories and inspiring ideas. And be sure to leave a comment below. Let us know what resonated with you most about Circe's journey. Until next time, keep those pages turning.